Welcome back to the Real French Connections. Today we are in Marseille and we've got something really special for you, and it's our very first video. Come and have a look. So we're here today with Sera, who is in the process of buying this amazing cafe called Fil En Trop in Marseille. Sera, tell us the story of buying the cafe. It's not yours yet, quite, is it?
It's not mine yet, and so I'm in the process of doing that with a lot of help, and that is just, it's amazing to sort of have something like this come together. It was my dream. I've been somebody who knits and crochets since I was very young, and to have sort of your own knit cafe and those kinds of things, I mean, just awesome. My port in a storm, or just a safe harbor, is always a yarn store. So it doesn't matter where I travel to. But when I relocated, I was looking for places, and this one was one of the very first places that popped up. And then, lo and behold, after a year of coming here and socializing and becoming a regular, Chloe was ready to sell, and I was like, oh well, I guess I'll buy it. I'm not the first American who was like, oh, I'd like to buy a business in France or in Europe in general. And so, you know, making that decision was very easy, and then figuring out the logistics of that has been hard. But I, from, you know, sort of the get-go, have always felt really welcomed here. It's wonderful, it's bright, and the community that's put together that comes here and knits and crochets and shares, you know, and shares their skills, but also just, you know, a cup of tea and good conversation. You know, just supportive people who have been sort of a part of my journey.
So tell us how the cafe works.
Yes.
You've always been into crochet, you say, and knitting.
Yeah.
Is this normal to come to France and find
It's not.
Basically a knitting cafe? In fact, perhaps you could explain the name, the relevance of the name.
Yeah, so Le Fil En Trop is a play on the words of things like a philanthropist, so someone who does good in the world. But un fil en trop is a thread or a piece of yarn too many. So it's just one extra. It's a little bit on top. France has a sort of growing interest and re-engagement in textile and other things. I mean, places like Lyon have always had textiles and things like that, and there was wool producing here. England definitely gets the lion's share, but it's coming back more and more, and you know, the companies we carry are historically French, and so to have that, and so
So tell us about these. So around the walls are these beautiful wools of every colour.
Yeah, and we've got things that are like hemp and cotton and an acrylic. Bergère de France is from 1946.
You do lessons too, or you will do lessons too, or
So
Chloe, the previous owner, does lessons?
Chloe does lessons, and I will continue. The biggest thing that we'll be adding is some of those lessons will get to be in English. So
fantastic for people coming in.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
good for
So
people
we
coming
will
in.
be, you know, we will support the expatriate community that is here, and so be maintaining that, and then just hoping to grow that, because there has been beginning knit and crochet, which we have and will continue, along with beginning macrame, which is just great fun, and it doesn't have quite the some of the technical skills that some of the knitting and crocheting can have. It can be a little bit more satisfying. All you have to do is be able to tie a knot.
Let's talk about Marseille. Marseille is a very unusual place for an American to choose. So where did you come from? Where was the start of your story, and how come you're here in Marseille?
I come to Marseille because of sunshine. I was born in Greeley, Colorado, which is on the plains, not too far away from Denver, and we have 300 days of sunshine a year. And so that was really the interest. And I had a leg up. I got my university degree here from 2000 to 2004 at the American University of Paris. And so I was in the capital, and the capital is great. Paris is a beautiful city. It is such a dream. But I knew I wanted to be someplace with sunshine. And that's not what you'll get in the northern part of France. There's so many beautiful places. So I was looking across the south coast, and this was supposed to be the starting point. I was going to come here and use it as a base for exploration, because I was thinking, maybe Montpellier, maybe Nîmes. I was thinking even smaller villages and other things like that. And found myself here in Marseille, in the Vieux Port, which is, you know, the center of town, in a wonderful Airbnb. It was very well placed to do my first winter here, and just fell in love. It's an easy city in terms of its pace of life. Its cost of living is very different than the capital, than Paris. It's a city that then is very different comparatively in terms of this is a working class city.
Yes.
It's grittier. This is not a town where, you know, it doesn't have some of the refinement or beauty. It doesn't mean that this city doesn't have its own thriving arts and really gorgeous corners and other things like that. And of course, you know, the Mediterranean is right there. We can get on top
5 minutes away.
Yeah, you can get on top of the hill and be able to see out to the Calanque, but it is a very different feeling. And so,
is that what you were looking for? Or is that just something that you arrived and you loved it?
I ended up being what kept me here. And what keeps me here, Marseille, is also very much so a city of neighbourhoods.
You mentioned the grittiness of Marseille, and it would probably be fair to say that this is quite a gritty area. And there's lots of tagging, there's lots of street art everywhere, fascinating, and some of it quite brilliant. And actually it feels that it adds to the energy of the place.
It does.
So when you chose to buy here, was that part of what attracted you?
Yes, because one of the things that I love about Marseille is that it is not a city that is particularly pretentious.
Yeah.
There, you know, we are not far away from all kinds of history. You know, this is the Phoenician city, where the oldest settled city in France. So to have a history that spans really 3 millennia, even older, you know, if you get back to our painted caves, but has seen so many transitions through people and has just been, you know, the ins and outs of commerce. If you read stories from, you know, the Crusades, people are coming through Marseille. And so, and then people are coming from the rest of the world through here. And we have a huge, thriving North African population. And to see that and to get to be a part of it, and the commerce that's happening through this city can feel very different. I think that's something that...
And that small business is very supported here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So when you walk up and down the streets, the restaurants, they're not huge restaurants.
Nope.
They're tucked away, they're a shop width. And so many places to eat, so many colors, so much vibrancy,
and it smells good, because we've got everything from Marseille soap to these beautiful stands of spices, and and people who are selling on the streets and other things like that. And we're not too far away from the markets at Noailles, and then the sea is right there. So, you know, we have, you know, people who are, you know, selling today's catch in a way as a person from landlocked Colorado is just it's just like, oh, there are fish. Voila. Marseille feels much more Mediterranean in that sense.
And you've been here
for 2 years.
2 years already. Talk to us about Paris. So you were a student there.
Yes.
And then, but presumably then you went back.
I went back. Oh my goodness. And I had years of feeling like my choice to go back was not the correct one.
And when you were still sitting there in Colorado, what made you think of actually making the move to France? What was the trigger?
Yeah. The trigger for me is a hard one. In education, you know, America is really where it's at on its relationship with gun violence and things like that. That was my big kicker.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, you know, I knew that for me, I had done shelter-in-place drills with 2 and 3-year-olds, and that's a hard one.
Shelter-in-place being what to do in an emergency, in a gun emergency.
In a gun emergency.
At age 3.
Yeah, so, you know, and when you tell the French people, they're like, avec des bébés? Ouais. And so, but I also knew that it was time. I had made it back here to Europe sort of completely by chance. And so it really had come to fruition after getting to spend some time in Europe again, and understanding that for me, many of the things we talk about for the American dream and community and things like that are very much so a part of the European way of life. And really, certainly here in a place like Marseille, being able to, you know your neighbors is just a huge part of how things go.
So, when did you get in touch with French Connections HCB, and what part of that journey was it? You'd obviously already decided to come.
So
what was it that you needed?
I got myself here. I had gotten because I had a visa previously and things like that. I was able to get a visa on my own and felt very confident. I moved here on my own in 2022 in October. And then it wasn't until I ran into wanting to exchange my driver's license.
Okay.
So that was the very first thing that I did. And it was a much smaller job. And so it was something that I had done And that process was great. You fill out a very clear form, you send documents, and I know that that is something I likely could have done on my own, but what I wanted was for someone to be able to help ease those pains, because when you read on a French website that the wait is between 3 and 18 months,
yeah.
Like it makes an American DMV seem so pleasant, you know, and so clear in terms of a process. And so bless, like, you know, like that, to have that process just to be shepherded and to be clarified and to say, and to receive updates of like, no news is good news, you know, and we're waiting. And then, all of a sudden to receive my, a little while, and then they followed up to make sure they're like, is the paperwork good? Because what you then have is a guarantee to make sure that if there's any problems, if my name had been misspelled, and that's something that,
start again.
Yeah, to start again in that process, which can be incredibly daunting. But this one was one where I was like, I would like to know, because you also send a document into the ether. You send your American license, which for a moment means that if I needed a car, I don't have any way of getting one.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly need one, but if there had been an emergency situation, to be like, oh, well, I can no longer legally drive or specifically legally rent a car. And so, and it wasn't until sort of this then came back of like the opportunity to buy something. It was like, well, how do you do that?
And so did you call them again?
I did. I called them again.
Hey,
hi. And, and I was like, well, like what advice can you give of like, what would you guys say? And they're like, we can take care of it. And I don't know, but there's something just deeply satisfying about having someone be like, don't worry, honey, we've got you.
Fantastic.
And for that, for that to be something that is itemized and clear in terms of like, here is what you are paying for. Here's what we can do. Use us.
Yeah.
Which it's so wonderful to be able to get on a WhatsApp or to make an appointment with Richard, and be able to ask those questions. And as I'm like easing into the notion of like, no, there are no stupid questions. There's, if I'm filling out a document, we can edit and I can receive this feedback. I have this these folks, I've paid for this expertise, this advice, comfort, and reassurance to a certain extent to say like, you didn't want to do this alone. You're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
And then also like, to have just teams of people, everything from, someone who does the business plan to the people who do the video.
What I was going to ask you was, given that a lot of, particularly Americans, I think it's fair to say, would dearly love to move to France, but have a hesitation or an anxiety or a reluctance to actually make the move. Based on your experience, what would you say to them?
That it is easier than they think, that there are so many resources, and that a lot is available here, that France is a country that offers a great deal, and that there are ways in which you get to engage here with community and other things that are definitely what you're looking for. The language is wildly important. It is something but French is, comparatively speaking, and I no longer remember. I was lucky to learn some French as a child. We had it in school, and so some of those things, and I've now had 30 years of French, but it is a language that is not as hard to learn. You already know a lot of French words and basis and things like that. And especially here in the South, people are much kinder. And
good point.
And have a great deal more patience to muddle through with you and other things like that. But then it really is just understanding that like we get to calm down. I really have had to learn how much we're here in the month of August right now, that things are closed and that the pace of life is slowed down, and that has, yes, it can have its frustrations, but it really is also that nothing has to happen for a while. I remember my first lease for an apartment here. I was so nervous. I'm like, well, they said they'd contact me at the end of the week. And, like Wednesday afternoon, I'm nervous. And I'm just like, well, I'm not sure what I'm doing over the weekend. And it's like, they're not going to call you on Saturday. No one is at work.
No,
they're having a pastis in the sunshine, Sera. They're like, and that is,
work-life balance.
And it is, and like, you arrive to a place that opens at 10 and everyone is out there with their little cup of coffee and their little clope, and they're all just chatting, and it like will gently, like it will be a gentle opening into the day. And as someone who was definitely like raised like keeping school hours, where it was like, you know, you arrive at 7:20 to be on time for your 7:30, you know, and are there until 5. It's just, it is a very different, and that is something that is so great to unlearn.
Yeah.
That pace is something that you know, we are doing so much as Americans that is, you know, that supports a very different way of life that just comes easier here.
So going back to the language thing, do you think that if people arrive with just the very basics and make an effort, even if they don't know any more words than a few, that people here tend to accommodate them, don't they, very easily, and make allowances and
They
help?
do. I think that, you know, the move here, also this is a city that doesn't demand quite as much. Paris is a city that belongs to the world in the way that London belongs to the world, New York, LA, Toronto, Tokyo, they belong to the world. This city is very French. It's very Mediterranean. Your welcome is not with white tablecloths.
No.
Here, you know, the expectation is that you will sit in the sun and have a pastis or a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
We have an airport that, you know, connects easily to all parts of the world.
Yeah.
You know, you were, you know, making it to Europe, even for me to get home back to the States, though I have to take an extra flight, it's not difficult.
Yeah.
It is well placed in terms of how you would like to get to see the world.
Yes.
And then the city itself is also, you know, much like I loved about Colorado, if there are people from the western part of the United States, this is one of the few places where being able to get out into nature is immediate.
Yeah.
I live a 3-minute walk from a bus that takes me to hiking, which I would have loved to have been in a place in Colorado where I could have gotten on public transportation and been dropped at the best hiking.
Yes.
Yeah, and then of course the sea. It is hard to sell short the Mediterranean. It is beautiful. There's, you know, beaches are easy to get to here and accessible. And
Best of all worlds.
I get teased by pals because I like to go down to the Vieux Port and just make sure the sea is there. Oh, look, it's there. Still there.
And watch the boats come in, watch those fishing boats come in.
Exactly. And
buy
you know,
fresh fish.
Exactly.
Delicious. So if you had to sum up the help, the help and ongoing help from French Connections, or if you were telling people about their services, what would you say?
I would say that what they're doing is they're sort of the fairy godmother of my Cinderella story, of that, like, is that there's, you know, and it's all of the sort of folks. It's not just having Richard who's sort of spearheading this whole piece, is that there's all of those, you know, those little creatures who've come in, you know, to help out and to put together the bits and pieces of it. There's so many things that you won't know. And some of those are things that you can face. I felt fine to get my visa and things like that, but it can run out. You can have your knowledge and your skills run out, and being able to ask for help and being able to have that. And so what was great was to come with an idea that was not quite fully formed, and to have someone say, here's what we can do. Yeah. Here's what we can do, and here is, you know, and to say, like, you are still in the driver's seat. It gets to be, you know, we're sending you off to have your dream. But that help is something where we have the people and we have the know-how. And the visa is the piece of the puzzle that I didn't know, because I knew that for me, people buy and sell businesses. That was a very clear piece of, like, it's probably going to look like this. But what does it look like when you have to change your statute?
Yes. Which is not always easy, is it?
And, you know, and especially also, I mean, in the solidarity of the French, and certainly something that I'm so receiving from French Connections, is the notion that the bureaucracy is a big part of French life. The bureaucracy is a big part of French life. We're not joking. But everyone believes that, everyone knows that, the French know that, and they're, you know, able to do that. But especially French Connections knows what it looks like and is able to say, no, we've gone over an amount of time that you should have waited. We need to talk to these people.
Someone to chase up if things are taking a bit longer than is normal.
Precisely. And, you know, who can get a hold of the prefecture, because they actually have connections with that. And as an American especially, is that there are things of, like, tax ramifications and the ways in which investment needs to happen. And that was probably something I could have done, but to really know that first off, to make sure that it's all above board and that it's being done correctly, but more than anything else, to save that money so that it's, you know, because I I'm a crafter and a teacher. I don't want to be an actuary. I don't want to learn about tax code in 2 countries. I don't think many people do.
No.
And to be able to say, I can hand this over. Happy to be responsible for it. That's not what I'm saying. I know that there are things that I still get to do and get to make sure happen. But to have somebody say, Sera, we're looking for this form. We're looking for this piece to the puzzle. We need these things from you. We'll take care of that. That's going this place. And to sort of have that, again, it is that sort of, that sort of fairy godmother of being able to say, yes, if you show up, we can make sure that we're going to get you to the ball. And it's not just helpful and reassuring. It also is the kind of thing where what it does is it frees me up to be able to have that energy, as I've said, to put in to put in the work here, as opposed to, I think applies for so many small businesses, is that you get to do the work of every piece to the puzzle. This is a situation where it's like, I'm letting some of these things be taken care of. And the investment in that, I think, really frees me up to be able to be more productive in here, which is quite frankly what I want to do.
So I think that brings us to a really neat last question. And that is, tell us a little about your plans. Because it's so gorgeous already in here, but it would be great if you tell us what you're planning to do.
I really would like to bring in some of these smaller folks who are doing custom dye work and things where we get to see artistry and things like that in materials. Really excited to partner with some amazing artists to come in and do workshops, both in French and in English. We know that we'll have that. And to get to engage with, the people who are a part of this street. It's existed for a long time. We have, Maison Empereur down at the end, which is, a historic space. And then, we come up to just this vibrant and thriving scene and see where we can do some fun stuff together. Nobody is deciding the fate of a country's budget based on how you made your sweater. There's some of these things that get to just be for the pure joy of them.
I really hope, Sera, that you will let us come back.
Oh yeah.
When you're up and running in 6 months or so, and we'll just come and see it thriving, full of people doing all the crafts, your things on the walls. We'd love to stay in touch. Love your vision. Love your embracing of Marseille, and it's just great to talk to you. Thank you.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.